Okay, you can keep playing until she gets here, okay, if you'd like. Okay. Venerable Robina will be here in 5 to 10 minutes. She says she'll be here very soon.
She talks about Bach. That's the monument that she's referring to. And there's more. There's so much more. There's more. They say that for a copyist to copy the music he wrote in a lifetime would take 200 years. Yeah. Yeah, he wrote it just like taking automatic dictation. It goes on, and I was just saying, it goes on for 200 years.
The details, like the precision of the details were so joyful. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Robbie, have you met Robbie?
Hello.
Robbie plays the piano. Robbie doesn't play with you. He plays the piano. Amazing. So happy.
Thank you.
They lifted all our hearts. Now I can start shouting. Thank you so much. Amazing. We should do more. I mean, you use it for concerts and things to make people happy. Yes. To make people happy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Can I leave you playing on the recording for the?
Sure.
Okay. If you want that removed, just let us know.
No.
I may have mentioned this to you before, but when I hold a microphone stand, I think like singing "My Wife" by the.
I thought you were going to go with the Freddie Mercury. But all right, that's good.
More retro.
Boilermaker.
It's funny, these people in here are talking about that big Buddhist community near Indiana University. I almost got up and said hello.
Right there.
That's good. I went to the other Indiana University. Thank you very much. But I did. Thanks to Venerable.
You're classy. Stay beautiful, man.
Okay. All right. So far we got to, we're now up to, we did the preliminaries leading us up to the essence of junior school. And the essence of that is abiding by everything culminates in the urgency to abide by the laws of karma, to practice ethics. And the crucial piece, so simple here, so fundamental, so important, the reason to practice ethics isn't because someone said so, isn't because you will get rewarded by being a good person. The reason to practice ethics is because that's the method to stop one's own suffering and to get one's own happiness. That sounds quite shocking initially, because we kind of resist that. We think, oh, that sounds selfish, because we don't understand this fundamental point. If you want to help someone else with nutrition, if you want to help others to live a good life physically with nutrition, you obviously have to learn about it yourself and with your body. No one would criticize that. So that's what karma is. Learning to know how to stop your suffering and how to get your happiness, which means you have to want to stop suffering. You have to recognize your suffering. And here we just got the grossest level. There are different levels of suffering. So here's the most basic. When We are sick of bad things happening to us. It's like we're sick of the sickness and the diabetes and the cancer. So we fundamentally change our behavior. That's exactly the analogy for the Buddha. So when we can understand that, we can see it's for our benefit. The reason you abide by the law of ethics in the beginning is because you are the beneficiary. As Lama Zopa says, all the rats and cockroaches will have a party because part of that is you'll leave them in peace. But the purpose, you are the beneficiary. I can't stress this enough, and we miss this point fundamentally. So then let's just describe those laws in more detail a little bit. We'll then go to the next level of practice where we continue practicing ethics, but we'll get to the root of the problem and start to unpack and unravel our mind, which is the source of what we do with our body and speech. And essentially, ethics is about behavior, which is body and speech. Mind is our own private business. Our body and speech is what impacts upon others, and which indeed leave imprints in our mind. So we control the body and speech first for our sake, then we get to the mind, we get to the heart of it, and that's when we become an actual Buddhist. That's the unique approach from the Buddhist perspective, and the Indian perspective in general, you know. You become your own therapist. And there we'll go into the more subtle levels of suffering. We'll look at the Four Noble Truths, Buddha's fundamental presentation, the very first teaching he gave, you know, once he achieved his own Buddhahood, once he became his own Sangye Buddha. That was his first teaching. So if it is so, according to the Buddha, that every millisecond of what we think and do and say programs my mind, sows seeds in my mind that will ripen as my future experiences, first and foremost, forget the impact upon others here, then in every single thing I think and do and say that's labelled negative will ripen as my suffering, and every millisecond of what I think and do and say that is virtuous will ripen as my happiness, then clearly we better learn to know how to define a negative action and distinguish it from a positive one. It's just logic if we use this model. So, in general, at this heaviest level of negative actions, they're ones that impact upon others. So a negative action of the body, for example, called killing. So there's 4 different ways that any action we do with body, speech, or mind, or all of them, any action we do, there are 4 ways in which it could ripen in the future. And I tell you, if we get this much about this law of botany, Buddha's botany, this much about the law of karma, which is the law that runs the universe, which is the law that runs sentient beings' lives, in which it's the law in which the lives and minds of sentient beings run. If we get this much alone, it's profound. It will help us interpret every one of our own experiences in life, and we look on the outside world, and it will explain to us why people suffer as well. It's very simple. Like anything, when you get it properly clear in your mind, it's simple. So there are 4 ways in which our present actions will ripen in the future, and there are 4 ways in which our present life are the fruits of our past actions. So let's use the present now. Well, the first way in which our past actions have ripened in the present is in terms of the type of rebirth we get. So we are humans. Well, as far as the Buddha is concerned, if we look at the full spectrum of all the types of rebirth, the human one is the best of a bad lot. You understand? The thing to remember as well is that all these sentient beings, which we just touched upon, mentioned in passing, there are countless sentient beings that don't have bodies that we can see, that are also existing in the universe, as Buddha, according to Buddha, which are also experiencing the fruits of their past actions. There are the animals and the creatures and the bugs and the fish. They're all sentient beings, or mind possessors, as the Tibetans call it. And we are sentient beings. And so the law of karma applies to all of them. And the Buddha's model of the mind applies to all of them as well, not just humans, which is really quite interesting, you know. So in terms of us, we got a human body. Well, from the Buddha's point of view, it's like we won the lottery. It's not the lottery because it's not random. It's actually the result of incredible virtue. So the very first level of practice seems kind of a bit passive. It's like don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't this, don't that. Of course, the next level of morality is do this and practice generosity and practice perfection and help others and give this. That's the proactive actions. That's the more powerful, virtuous, extra virtuous actions. But this first level of practice is to harness our crazy energy. So don't kill, don't lie, don't steal. Doesn't just mean you just don't do something. It is a profound, intentional action, and which brings profound results. So for us, we can deduce that our mind left its past life, and not more than a few weeks later, found its way to our present mother's human womb. And it's the fruit of just getting the human body. And we can see there are 7 billion of us on this planet. So we can deduce that every one of us at the time of our past death, not more than 7 weeks before our present conception, in our mother's human womb, every one of us, to one degree or another, had a very powerful, virtuous karmic seed of specific, conscious, non-killing be triggered at the time before we stopped breathing in the past life, that already programmed us to go to our present mother's human womb several weeks later. That's the same for all of us, whether we're Hitler or Mother Teresa. And that already is like winning the lottery. Because you can see that in one evening in a summer, you'll probably have 7 billion mosquitoes in your backyard. And that's probably a conservative count. So if they're all sentient beings, and we're sentient beings, it's fairly evident that it's harder to get a human one. So even though your point before, we can deduce that it's actually good that there are now more humans, but in a way there's a downside to it, which means it's easier to get a human birth now because times are so degenerate. You understand that the human body is not worth as much as it used to. It's like cheap. Do you understand? I always have this vision. I remember when I was a kid, I saw pictures in Germany about how when the economy collapsed after the war, and I saw a picture of a person with a wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks to get their loaf of bread. That's degenerate times. So it's like, look how much work you had to do just to get a loaf of bread. It's like the currency's devalued. Well, the human life is now less valuable, although nevertheless it's still the best of a bad lot, and I'll explain why. So we can deduce that a virtuous karmic seed was triggered in our case, this is a very powerful point, that programmed us to go to our present mother's human womb. They're not even thinking about us yet. Maybe even your mother and father haven't even met yet. So this is where karma is so powerful. The Buddha's view is if karma is a natural law, nobody made it up, no one's running it. The universe runs within that law. And so it can't be random. It's not just accidental. We really do believe it's good luck. We really do believe that life is good luck and bad luck. That is the clearest view we have. Everything's good luck and bad luck. Because it's like we don't have the view. Unless I say we don't have the view of karma, then it appears like that. But the Buddha's view, it can't be random. It's a natural law. It's running. If you don't know botany, it looks like good luck and bad luck that flowers ripen. You understand? Wow, oh look, there's a weed. Bad luck. No, it's the fruit of a seed. You better learn botany. So to get to a human body is like a miracle. It's the fruit of a powerful, intentional non-killing in the past. So we've got one of those. That's the first one. Now at the same time, and roughly speaking, you can say at the time of a past death, at the same time, all the other seeds were triggered for the other 3 types of karma that are playing out in this life. So the next one, clearly, it's very obvious. Hitler's got a human body, and so has Mother Teresa. I use those 2 examples because they're extreme examples of bad and good, But where's the difference? When they start to act and speak and think, their tendencies, that's the difference, their personality traits. And this is the point for the Buddha. We think we got these from our mummy. We think he got those from his mummy. Well, there's no evidence that his little Austrian housewife mummy did those things like that, or that taught him like that. And there's no evidence that Mother Teresa's mummy was some kind of saint. So this is where, when you get extreme examples, it doesn't seem to fit that mummy and daddy made them, So the Buddha's view, of course she didn't make them. At the second time, before you even stop breathing, at the same time that this karmic seed that was triggered to bring to program us to get the human mummy, at the same time, the next lot of karmic seeds were triggered, which give us our tendencies. Where's the cellist? What's your name? Paul. Jonathan. So Jonathan's tendency to be good at music. That was one of his personality tendencies. It was triggered. His mummy might also be good at it, but it was his tendency from having done something similar before. His tendency to be a kind man, to be a generous, or any of us, to be loving or angry or jealous, you name it, look at your personality. Every one of those tendencies was triggered. They're seeds from the habit of being like that before. This kind of karma is like habit, basically. It's very simple. They were all triggered to produce your personality. You still haven't even died yet in the past life. The third lot are called experiences similar to the cause, and this is the painful one. Because we feel we're an innocent victim who didn't ask to get born. So when bad things happen to us, we're so shocked, we're profoundly shocked. And the instinct we have is it's absolutely not fair. I don't deserve suffering. Because we don't think that we play any role in our life. We think someone else made us. So we assume whether it's God or mummy, they'd better give me nice things. So we don't get it when bad things happen. It's too unbearably painful for us. But the thing is, we have lots of good things happen. Every one of us, if we started counting all the unbelievable good things that have happened to us. And this karma is basically how we're seen and treated by others in this life. And this began at conception. And if you add up in your life, basically there are all these different sentient beings who've impacted upon us in this life, whether it's the rats and the roaches in your kitchen, whether it's your mummy, your sister, your auntie, your uncle, your ex-husband, whether it's your friends, your neighbours, your colleagues, whatever it is. Basically, people have either been mean to us or have been kind to us. And often we know they change roles. But that's it. That's this karma. Whether a person believes your words, lies to you, harms you, rejects you, rapes you, gives you $1 million, teaches you, gives you credit in the bank. Our life, we're very social beings. You look at it, we are in touch with sentient beings all the time. And they simply either harm us or help us. It's so simple. So of course we love all the good things, but the tragedy is we never say, why do good things happen to me? This is kind of intense. We have this kind of arrogance and hubris that assumes I deserve good things, but we have this arrogance and hubris that we assume we don't deserve bad things. Buddha doesn't even use the word deserve. That's our heavy kind of punitive concept. We create the causes. You don't deserve cancer if you smoke cigarettes. It's the heartbreaking consequence of your actions. Don't be so brutal with yourself. Nobody deserves anything. We get the results of what we cause. If you've eaten well all your life, then you can, well and truly you can say you deserve good health. But don't say it that way. It's just the result of your own actions. You take responsibility. If Jonathan's good at the cello, which he evidently is, it's because he's practiced it. So of course he deserves to play well. He's practiced. But if he sits there and feels sorry for himself because he's never practiced, and how dare I don't play well, whose fault is it? Well, he's not going to blame Bach. He's not going to blame the cello maker. He's going to blame himself for being lazy. So you become accountable with these things. But when it comes to emotional stuff, we have no accountability because we have this intense assumption that somehow I didn't ask to get born, which somehow means someone else made me, which means they had better only give me good things. It's quite irrational, really. Whereas the Buddha's view is we are the fruit of our past actions. So as soon as you hear that, we grow up. It's painful if we're harmed, but we know why. It's marvelous if we're helped, but we know why. So that the learning is, my God, why did that person not believe my words? Not, it's terrible, I'm telling the truth. It's, wow, I must have lied. Action point, I'll stop lying. It's amazing when someone gives you a gift. Wow, why? Because I must have been generous before. Action point, I'll keep being generous. Not, oh, I deserve good things, give me more. No, this is a powerful concept if we can get it. It's transformational if we can get it. It makes us accountable. It stops our pain. It stops our arrogance. It stops our pride. It stops our low self-esteem. It stops our guilt. It stops attachment. It stops anger. I mean it. It's huge if we look at this. Go deeper into it. It's accountability. It's not comfortable. It's not the view we have already. No one said you've got to believe this or have it, but it's a powerful one if you apply it. It means we grow up and we realize we are the creators of our own reality. And so even the fourth one is even most surprising. So the first one is your own type of body. The second is your tendencies within your body, in your mind, your own habits, good and bad. The third is the way you're seen and treated by others. This is the hard one for us. And the fourth is even environmental. It's quite subtle, this one. It's all explained in the literature. It's quite subtle. the way the physical world impacts upon us. Our minds run everything. These physical elements out here, as far as Buddha is concerned, have no power from their own side. They are what they are. They've got their own laws. But our relationship with them is caused by our past actions. And there's explanations of all this, especially in the Vajrayana teachings and the more esoteric teachings. So an example of a simple one action of conscious non-killing. First result, human body. Second result, no tendency to kill. You wake up in this life like that friend of mine I always quote, who was taking the lice out of her little boy's head. He was 3. I always tell this story. And he's 3, and she's taking the lice out of his head, and he's crying with compassion for the lice. Mummy, don't hurt them. It's their home. Leave them alone. And he's now 40-something, and he's never had the thought to kill a living being. So not only since he was born did he have a tendency to not kill, he even has compassion for lice in his own head. She hadn't taught him. This was too soon. He's 3 years old. This is how karma works. So we can deduce from this perspective he'd practiced conscious non-killing, which means he woke up in this life with no thought to kill. How incredible. The third result of non-killing, very simple. You won't die young and you won't get killed. Well, so far that's us. But don't hold your breath. The fourth environmental result, and that's us too to some degree, all of us, not all of us necessarily, you're fat and healthy and whatever you eat nourishes you. We can see this is so classic, this one. Look at people, environmental illnesses, for example. We have more and more of those. One person, can eat milk and die. Someone else drinks milk and they're healthy. It really proves emptiness, and this is the karmic one, that we've got this generalized result of non-killing is that the food you eat, the air you breathe, the water you drink is delicious and nourishing. And we can still find places like that on this planet. And the opposite is obvious. So the opposite for the 4 ways of ripening of killing, a suffering realm, or animals, spirits, hell beings, these ones. We'll discuss maybe if there's time. Sentient beings, for the Buddha, he's observed. Second, the result of killing is that you wake up in this life with a tendency to kill. Now, I'm sorry, but if you look at our planet, that's one of the commonest things we do. Even with respect, even most religions say it's okay to kill. I'm taught, Catholics teach, and I have respect for my Catholic upbringing, I promise, that it's God made creatures for our benefit. And so it's cool to kill them, Very interesting view. The third result of killing is that you die young or you get sick. No, die young or you get killed. Look at the world. Fetuses, children, 17-year-olds who are healthy, die young. No medical reason. Or you get killed in an accident. I mean, these things happen. This is all the fruit of your karma runs out. Your petrol tanker morality runs out, basically. And the fourth one, environmental, is obvious, The results of killing. You've got environmental illnesses. The water harms you. The peanuts harm you. It can be a collective experience where you all live in the same place where the water's polluted, or it can be individual, like the peanut one, So this is the entire universe, as far as Buddha is concerned. The thing that runs it is sentient beings, sentient beings' actions, karma. And that impacts upon the physical world, it impacts upon how others see us, it impacts upon our own mind, and even gives us our own rebirth. Of course, it sounds abstract because we don't have this view, but it's all explained in the literature. I'm just giving you the summary of it, So it's kind of powerful. We're in charge, we run the show, but we have to realize we run the show, then we can begin to take responsibility. And from this, so much happiness comes already, and we're not even talking about looking at our mind yet. Just interpreting. We're just talking about interpreting our life differently, instead of being a victim, which is how we interpret now with respect to us. Because we just think it's good luck and bad luck, frankly. It's quite interesting. That's the essence of karma. That's the essence of it, those 4 things. So every time, what's the action point? Every time someone's kind to you, this is incredible. Oh, wow, this is the fruit of my past action. Action, I must keep being kind to people. Don't put that down. Don't criticize that. That's intelligence. Every time you see a rose grow, wow, look at that rose. I must grow more. Not, oh, I'm feeling guilty. I don't want more roses. That sounds very selfish. No, go for more roses, please. It's the fruit of your past actions. You grew it. Weeds, oh my God, look at the weed. I better not do it again. Action point, don't grow them more. Pull them out. Stop planting them. It's very simple as a concept, but it takes us a lot of time to navigate this, to get through to it, because of the assumptions in our mind. So that's the essence of high school. Like I said, you prime your mind by thinking about getting a teacher, perfect human rebirth, death and impermanence, lower realm suffering, turn to the Buddha, now we put the money where our mouth is. This is the advice he gives. This is his medicine. And we do the work. He doesn't do it, we do it. We do the work. That's the essence of the junior school, essence. So the results of this, you die with a happy mind, and you guarantee to get another decent human body. Keep on moving on your path. But there's more we can do, even in here. So let's just talk now about the power of vows, and let's talk about purification, because that's all part of the karmic one as well, junior school practice. So the one of vows is very, very powerful and very interesting, to think about it. So in general, everything we think and do, okay, before I get to vows, let's analyse a little bit of negative action. Let's want to analyse a virtuous or a positive action, analyse the components of an action when we do it and what it is that makes it sow those seeds. Then I'll go into the power of vows. Then we'll go to purification. And that'll get us to the end of the day, maybe not. We'll see. Okay. So we can have some questions. So let's analyse. And if Buddha's saying a negative action will ripen as suffering, you don't just believe him. Say, please show me your logic. So let's unpack that. Let's unpack what a negative action is. Or what they call a complete negative action will be one that drops a seed in your main bank vault, which in the case of non-killing would ripen as a type of rebirth, and then many rebirths after that, because one seed can bring many fruits. In terms of the same with a killing action, same thing. It will bring a suffering rebirth. So as well as the other residual results of the tendency, the experience, and the environmental. But let's look at a complete action of non-killing. There's 4 components in place, 4 things in place. The first is there must be an object, a sentient being, that mouse in your kitchen. An object of the action. Second, the crucial piece is your mind involved in it. This is massive. And there's 2 parts there. There's more to it than this, but this is keeping it simple. So 2A is bare bones intention. Not, oh, good intention or bad intention, not that use, but bare bones I will. Volition. I will not kill that mouse. Or I will save that mouse. That's your bare bones intention. Now that's got no meaning on its own. It depends on your 2B, your motivation. And you'll hear my point. What makes that action virtuous is the motivation of compassion. Usually it would be compassion. Oh, poor little mouse, I don't want to hurt it. I must not kill it. That's compassion, isn't it? Very simple. 3, you do the action. You catch the mouse. 4, you release it. Happy mouse. Thank you, Robina. Bye-bye. That's a complete action of non-killing, speaking very simply. Now, the crucial component in there, the piece that causes the action you do to be labeled virtuous, which in turn determines the seed you plant in your bank vault, which in turn determines the fruit, is the motivation. Not even the intention, I will not kill the mouse. It's the motivation. So in other words, in that, when you do that, think about it. When a person you see them saving a mouse and you see them compassionate. Oh no, the poor mouse. Look, be careful, don't hurt it. We must not hurt it. That's compassion. Their whole being becomes immersed in that compassion. Think about it. Think about it. That's what makes it positive. Not even the intention to save the mouse. Because this is funny, but you'll hear my point. Let's say you save the mouse. You see a person, oh, little mouse, be careful, don't hurt it. But what's your motivation? You want to save it so you can cook it later for lunch because Robbie's coming home and he likes fresh mice for dinner. I mean, it's funny, but hear the point. It looks like a kind action, doesn't it? But look at my motivation. To kill it later so I can cook it for dinner. You hear my point? It looks like a nice action. Save the mouse. But look at my reason behind it. Just like if Robbie's rich and I want his money. I will look like I'm being generous. He can't find his wallet. He always, I'll have my $20. Here, Robbie, use my $20 for the taxi. Please take my $20. Don't I look generous? But look at my motivation. I want his money. I want him to like me, so I give him all his money. That's manipulation. That's not virtue. So the action itself doesn't always tell the truth, in other words. You hear me, people? It's the reason that impels you to do it. That's what they mean by motivation. That's the piece. But often our intention and motivation so come together, we can't tell the difference. So therefore we don't even know our own intentions half the time. We don't even know our own motivations half the time. In general, I'm being so kind to Robbie, just in general, because I want him to like me. That's not virtue. It's attachment. Or he thinks, oh, Robina's such a nice person. She does my dishes. She cleans my house. She's so kind. No, it's because I want Robbie to love me. That's not virtue. It's attachment. But we can't tell that because we're driven by these ridiculous delusions. So we've got to know our own mind well and consciously have a pure motivation. Then the action we do becomes virtuous. In itself, it's not virtuous. You can hear that when you realize intention and motivation are different. This is really powerful. We're very conscious of our own mind. Be very authentic, you know. So clearly a negative action, just the same. The object, mouse. Intention, I'll kill the mouse. Motivation, aversion. Don't make it fancy, don't make it complicated. It's aversion. Okay, if you want to kill it for dinner, that's attachment. But if you don't like mice, which is the usual reason, which is more violent than attachment. You know? It's more violent. Aversion, how disgusting, a mouse in my kitchen, how dare it. Third, you do the action for dead mouse. That's it, clear, that's a complete negative action. It'll pop a seed into my negative bank vault seed, which I won't bother pulling out, and eventually it's going to ripen as many suffering rebirths. It's a law. Buddha's just interpreting the law. It's not punishment, not reward. No concept in Buddhism like that. I keep saying it because we have to keep remembering it. So if this is so, if even a simple analysis here of everything we think and do and say, and we're doing thinking and doing saying things 1,000 times a day, we had better learn to unpack and unravel our own motivations and mind, which is why we've got to get to high school to start looking into our mind. But at least here the main concern is just don't kill, just don't lie, just don't steal, just don't badmouth, just control your behaviour. You know? What I'm doing here is an analysis of what makes it negative. Just don't do it, please, you know. That's the most powerful one. Then you stop sowing seeds that would at least stop ripening as your future suffering. How amazing. Now this is where vows comes in now, and this is very powerful. Buddha loves his vows. Vow, you know, in very simple terms, is a vow is a powerful decision. In Buddhist terms, a vow is a decision to refrain from something. We have another set of things we call commitments. It's a decision to do something, an agreement. They're agreements, basically. So you doing it, you're agreeing, if you like, with the Buddha. Okay, Buddha, but it's not really, you're not doing Buddha's wishes. So these vows, usually, as you must know, when you decide, let's say you become a Buddhist, because we're creatures of form and habit, it's really nice to formalize these things. Because that helps our minds, you know. So then when we do that, then when a second little thing we will do is we'll take the 5 laypersons' vows. And we do it in front of somebody who for us represents the Buddha. And that makes it very tasty, you know, very powerful. Like Geshe-la when he does it here. So Geshe-la got these from his teacher, who got them from his teacher, who got them from his teacher. And this is tasty. You can track that back into an unbroken chain of real living human beings right back to the Buddha. It's a living oral tradition, and there's so much power in that. I find that very tasty. We're plugging into this power source, you know. You can make your own decisions, but there's something extra tasty. You're plugging into that power source of real living humans, unbroken, all the way back 2,500 years ago to the Buddha himself when he started doing these things. I like that very powerfully. That's very delicious. So the Buddha says vows have a subtle form that's visible to clairvoyance. There's something so potent psychologically about vowing to refrain from certain things. So here at this point, as Lama Zopa says, you know, karma in general, okay, the key point, like I just pointed out, the key factor in there is to be motivation. That's what colours the entire action, that makes it negative or positive. But so that in general. But the Buddha's saying when you make a you commit you just kneel, when you do the ceremony and you vow, I will never kill. Which means from here till the day I die, you vow you will never kill. So that's why it's so important to purify at the end of every day, and we'll talk about that, because that strengthens the vow. It's like every time you do a push-up, it makes it stronger and easier, doesn't it? Every time you reiterate your vow at the end of every day, that strengthens your mind, that digs the groove deeper and deeper in your mind, such that you wake up next life like that boy who just intuitively didn't have any wish to harm or kill any sentient being. No one had to teach him. He'd programmed his mind with it. That's the power of vows. So the power of vows is such, it's this, and it's very clear. Rinpoche said one time that you can have a person doing lots of spiritual practice, but doesn't have a vow not to kill. But another person doesn't have much practice but has a vow not to kill. The person keeping their vow, that person creates infinite more virtuous karmic seeds ticking into their bank vault 24 hours a day and purifying, putting atomic bombs under the habit of past killing. So basically, Rinpoche says being a nice person isn't enough. We absolutely have to live in the power of vows. We can't get ahead of the game without vows. Because the fact is, our motivation isn't that strong. We don't have bodhicitta. We don't realize emptiness. So our good motivations are quite weak. That's just being reasonable. And this is the other point, the really crucial point. Here we are sitting in this room right now. And we're mostly probably not killing anything. Unless we're sitting on a mouse and we don't realize it. I forget the bugs we're probably killing at the moment. But in general, we're not killing. But there's no intention not to kill, is there? And the reason we don't have an intention not to kill at the second is because we don't see a sentient being whom we try to avoid not to kill. So therefore we're not creating any virtue whatsoever of non-killing, even though we're sitting here being nice people. So being nice is not enough. The mind has to be involved in it. If you don't have a vow, the only time you create the virtue of non-killing to put a seed in your various bank vaults is when you intentionally decide not to kill. And the only time you intentionally decide not to kill is when the sentient being is there and you consciously decide it. Well, that's not often. I mean, I've noticed it, maybe it's in the summer out there, yeah. But so far, when I'm sitting at Robbie's house, one little creature might come around every now and again. If you're living in India in the rainy season, it's like Jurassic Park, I promise you. You really can practice virtue every day of not, I don't want to kill, I don't want to kill, I don't want to kill, because you're just meeting beings. I mean, I remember one hotel at dusk, these kind of it was like the movie Birds, kind of whacking into the window, smashing into the window, And when you go to Bodh Gaya, and at dusk, as dusk comes, the whole ground is a carpet of living flying creatures. It's beyond belief. You can't believe it, There you really got to work every second and wishing not to harm sentient beings. But we're living, this is the irony. We're in this room right now, okay? There's no mold coming out of the ceilings. There's no creatures coming from under the wood. There's no mosquitoes there's no terrorists walking in. We are very fortunate. Why? Because we've practiced such virtue in the past of non-killing that we're not being threatened by anything. But we're resting on our laurels. We've got to keep more seeds of non-killing going, otherwise our karma will run out. So the only way to do that is with having vows. Because when you've got a vow in your mind stream, Buddha says, 24 hours a day that you're not killing, even when you're not thinking about it. That's the point. The power of vow is such that you're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds 24 hours a day. And you're purifying your mind. The power of vows is like that. This is the Buddha's teachings. So we've got to think about that. It's kind of potent. It's kind of delicious. Then who would not want to live in vows? It's like you'd feel like you're missing out. Think of it practically. And unless we're a bodhisattva with great realizations of emptiness, we can't get ahead of the game. We're just going to use up our good virtue and then run out. We've got to keep creating more. It's like constant. You can't just rest on your laurels because of all your past gardening and you've got all your cauliflowers and your delicious, carrots. Oh, aren't I lucky? All these carrots and veggies. Aren't I lucky? Eat them all up. Forget to grow more. You'll end up with nothing. Karma's dynamic. You've got to keep growing more. It's just dynamic. It's like that. It's like, I'm a good person. Look at me. That's too static. You've got to be a dynamically good person, sowing good seeds. So it's a full-on approach to your life just having the view of karma, just thinking about behavior. We're not even gone to high school yet to look at your mind. This is so powerful and delicious. This is karma, understanding vows. And then we've got purification, makes it even more delicious. Lama Zopa says, we are insane not to purify every day. What's he mean? Well, given that every millisecond of what I think and do and say programs me, it's so dynamic, I am the one producing this person. We're this work in progress, okay? One of the things about ego grasping is we think we're set in stone. I'm this ugly person full of this, fat, lazy, this, short, bad at this, good at that. I'm this person plodding through life like a piece of concrete. It's the absolute opposite to reality. You're a highly moving project. A project in making. When I say a work in progress. Every millisecond what you do and say is sowing seeds, but that will produce the future. But we are obsessed with now. And that's where if we really understand practice, just like a gardener would. So the seeds and fruits is a very powerful analogy. It's like we're obsessed with wanting the good feelings now. We think if we feel good now, I must be progressing. That's not a valid assessment at all. You know, if you're a gardener, that you're happy to sow the seeds, and you don't expect fruits overnight. You don't wake up tomorrow morning and expect a rose bush. You don't expect an oak tree. You know it's a work in progress because you know that. You've got a reasonable assessment of how long things will take and you enjoy the process. And it can be very messy being a gardener. So if I don't know botany, I look outside there and I see this big mess and you're knee deep in dirt, I'll think, the poor thing, how depressed. And you look at me beaming, you're so happy. I think, what are you happy for? Well, I'm growing a garden. You don't mind. Pulling out all the weeds is great fun. But here with us, we think it's just miserable all the time. We've got to pull out the weeds and be happy. Happy to meet your anger. Happy to meet the miserable people who are harming you. It's all part of the grist for the mill, you know. You're a work in progress. It's a long-term view. We've got to give up the junky attitude of I want to be happy now. It's a bonus if we are. Nothing wrong with that. But that's not a sign of success, I promise. In other words, just because you're happy one morning, that doesn't make your oak tree look better. Just because you're not happy one morning makes no difference. If you're going to put the seeds in and nourish it, the oak tree will be fine, thank you. Whether you're happy or suffering is another issue. We're such junkies to feel good, you know, and we assume that's the fruit of spiritual practice. Not so. It's great if you do feel good, but it's hard work. So we've got to have a long-term view, you know. So purification is exactly the same principle as karma. As Lama Yeshe says, we create negativity with the mind, so we purify it by creating positivity with the mind. It's exactly the same principle. So it's the 4 R's. And I've been talking about this every year I come. I feel very bored by it. I'm not bored by it. I hope you're not bored by it, but I suppose you haven't been hearing me for 22 years, have you? Some of you might have been. So we'll keep telling ourselves. Well, I've been saying it for 22 years here, but I still never get bored by saying it because I keep reminding myself. Okay, the 4 R's. Regret. I don't think I put it in the book. So I'm always trying to save the centre's money, otherwise I have 400 pages, you know. No, I only talk about karma in terms of how we create karma. I haven't taught how we purify karma. But I'm sure if you look in past notes from my courses, you're going to find them. And in all the teachings anyway. Okay. The 4 R's, a friend of mine called it that, it's very easy. Regret, reliance, the remedy, resolve. Regret, reliance, the remedy, resolve. Good way to remember. Regret, reliance, or RE. Regret, reliance, the remedy, and resolve. And this is, again, as always, simple psychology. Okay? Regret's the first step. And always I quote this, and it's always powerful to remember. One person asked His Holiness the Dalai Lama, what's the difference between regret and guilt? Huge, you can't believe. We run to guilt like a magnet. We love to feel guilty. It's our ancient habit. So, okay, regret, as His Holiness said. Guilt, as His Holiness said. Who's coming in? What's happening? Come on in. Come in, sweetheart. Regret, as His Holiness, guilt, as His Holiness said. Guilt is you look in the past Okay, I'll wait till Miranda settles down, then I'll go on. You just came in time, Miranda. Okay, so the first one, regret. So His Holiness said, guilt, you look in the past and you go, I did this, and I did that, and I did this, and then you conclude automatically, we do this in the same breath, and I'm a bad person. We really, really deeply know that one. And it's the nature of ego to do it. So don't beat yourself up, and don't blame your Jewish mummy or your Catholic mummy. They didn't teach you this. We think they did, but it's already in our mind. It comes with ego grasping. But then he said, what's regret? Well, the first step is exactly the same. You look in the past. I did do this, and I did do that, and I did do this. But then you change your conclusion, and this is what takes practice. And the conclusion is, what can I do to fix it? What can I do to change? That's the difference, and that's the world of difference. In other words, that's action. Guilt, I'm a bad person, has no benefit to anybody. First of all, like all the delusions, and we're going to talk about those, and I really have to get to high school today before we go home, which is the delusions, where you really start to really go deeply into the mind and unpack and unravel. We'll do our best to get there before 4. We will. That was such a long sentence, I forget the beginning, I'm sorry. What did I say? Regret. Yeah, the delusions, okay. So anyway, I'll forget what the beginning of the sentence was. Never mind, I'll just say anyway. So regret is what we have to practice. We have to practice thinking. So this is where the karmic ones comes in. We're going to take ownership. Because we know that doing that action of killing the rat and lying to my boyfriend and cheating on this and bad-mouthing the next door neighbour and shouting at the driver on the road, whatever, little or big, it doesn't matter, little or big, killed your grandmother, little or big, it doesn't matter. You acknowledge it. You've got to acknowledge you did it. Why? Because everything you do will sow seeds and will produce your future experiences. So those are actions that we label negative. And you know, whether we did them according to attachment or by accident. If accident, you didn't create such negative karma, but if it's attachment or anger, the usual views, then they put deep seeds in your bank vaults. Of course you don't want them to ripen. It's pretty obvious. It's like if you eat poison, you know, the Lamas use the analogy of poison. It's a great one. It's like eating sugar if you're going to get diabetes, same logic. As soon as you notice you took the sugar, oh my God, what an idiot. You don't go, oh, I ate sugar, I'm a bad person. How stupid, doesn't help anybody. It's not proactive. It's not beneficial. There's no action. It doesn't help. This is the thing I was going to say before, right? I remember now. Delusions, when we get to them, their key function is they over-exaggerate the object. So here the object's me, and here the object is bad me. Be like the Catholic Christians. There's a brilliant saying the Christians have. You don't criticize the sinner, the me, you criticize the sin, the action. That's really much more precise. That's what I joked before, and I said, Lama, yes, he said to me, Robina, nothing wrong with your heart, dear, it's just your behaviour. He was separating the sense of me from my particular behaviour. Not the whole of me is bad, which is what guilt is saying. But based upon the fact that you did 4 things wrong, you over-exaggerate your badness and you paint the whole of you with that one brush. That's clearly exaggerating, and that's what delusions do. So here we're going to be more rational, and we're going to regret that we did this and this and this and this action, because you know what, Robina, I don't want the future suffering. I don't want to get diabetes. I don't want to get sick. That's the point about karma. It's going to harm me, and I don't want suffering. But we've got to cultivate that attitude. This is very abstract for us. We've got to own it. So of course it's like, so in other words, this is like compassion for yourself. This is regret. This is like compassion for yourself. I'm serious. It's like compassion for yourself, you know. Because you know you've done a dumb action that'll harm you, and you know you don't want suffering. So it brings accountability. It brings accountability. But we've got to think this through naturally, not just be vague and say, I regret. You've got to unpack it and spell it out. Otherwise it's just like guilt, you know. That's the problem. So this first step then, you regret, and you'll be conscious in this first step, you regret. So what do you regret? Well, there's certain things you've done today. Most of us have busy days. You know, you might not go around killing and stealing from too many people, but you did certain things that you want to acknowledge that you've done that will harm you. So you regret them at the end of the day. You're kind of sorting out your mess, you know. You're talking to yourself. Then, of course, you can think of certain things you've done in this life that you know that is labelled negative. Harm people, kill the animals, kill the creatures, kill the baby. We have abortions. I mean, for me, that's an action of killing a human being. I'd had one when I was 23. I always think about that as an action I've done, you know. So then that reminds you you've done that in the past, in countless past lives. So then you bring in the lot and you say, and I regret whatever I've done with my body and speech to harm sentient beings since beginningless time. You regret the lot. And then you think, why? Because you know what, Robina? I don't want future suffering. No way. So then you think, well, whom can I turn to? This is like the poison. I've just taken poison. Oh my God, I've eaten poison. Quick, whom can I turn to? The doctor. So here, this is the relationship with the Buddha we have. It's not our creator. You know, it's very crucial. And this is where we have to see the difference again very clearly, spell it out. When I was a Catholic, I did turn to God. I did confess to God. But then the job is to regret this action and then to beg God to forgive me, because that's the purification. That's why I went to confession every time, because I had to be purified. I'm not complaining. But that's just not Buddha's view. He would forgive you. He's a really nice person. But it's not his job. You've got to realize this. It's not his job. That's not the relationship. It's a mentor, a doctor, and that's really serious. This attitude is, I'm sick of, it's like the poison one. You don't go to your doctor and say, please forgive me for eating poison, get me off the hook. No, it doesn't work like that. Same with the Buddha. When we get this, it's so wholesome, I tell you. So we turn to the Buddha. We rely. Second, reliance. First step, there's 2A and 2B. Reliance A, reliance B. So reliance A is you rely upon the Buddha. So if you do that practice that we do it in meditation, using the Buddha Vajrasattva, if you're familiar with that, then you visualize the Buddha above your head, and then you can just do a little prayer refuge. But for me, it's really it's meaningful to be more personal about it. Like, oh, wow, how amazing, how fortunate. I've got someone to rely upon whose medicine will help me. Wow, how fortunate I am. Instead of just, oh, Sangye Chodan, blah, 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 you know. Do you understand? Make it real. Speak in your own words. Second part, 2B. Sounds weird to call it reliance. And this is where we now have compassion for others. We now regret for others' sake. But why do they call it reliance? It's very puzzling. Once we get this, and you see this in the 8 verses, it's a weird concept. But once you get it, you'll understand. What they mean by this now is, now at this point, we want to cultivate compassion for others. The first one's the first stages. Regret for your own sake. Now we want to regret for others' sake. And we want to have compassion now for others. So the logic of why it's called regret is because if you want to cultivate compassion, you have to meet people who are suffering. You have to know people who are suffering. If you never meet a suffering person, it will be impossible to have compassion, because compassion is empathy with suffering. So if you've never met a suffering person, you can't have compassion. So in other words, from this point of view, you need suffering sentient beings. You're relying upon the presence of suffering sentient beings as the grist for your mill in order to cultivate compassion. That's the point. Can you hear that point? If you can't, tell me you can't, and I'll speak about it again. Don't be nervous.
You said that's part of the reliance step?
What?
You said that's part of the reliance? Like you're relying
Yeah.
on that?
So that's what the reliance means. You get the point or not? I'm happy you're saying not. You don't get it. Good, thank you. Okay, this is very helpful, because I say it and you don't say a word. I think you understand me, then I realize you don't. So let's just say you want to become a doctor. Why would you want to? What's the best reason for becoming a doctor? What's the best reason? What's the best reason? To help others, to help heal people, right? A doctor's a person who heals people. You agree with that? Okay, so let's say you're fully qualified. You put your little notice out. John MD. What's your name again? Who? Zach MD, right? But let's say no suffering people ever turn up. How would you feel? A bit useless, right? This is a point, a bit sad, because you know they're out there. You understand? So you need suffering people, don't you? Don't you need suffering people? So you can function to help them. Well, rely upon means need. It sounds odd, we don't talk this way, but reliance is you rely upon sick people coming to you, so now you're so happy you can help them. So bodhisattvas need suffering people. Are you with me now? That's the meaning. It's a bit more, we don't think this way, but it's logical when you hear it. As Geshe Sopa said, Lama Yeshe Lama Zopa's guru from the past, Geshe Sopa, I remember he said this, he leaned forward and he said, Bodhisattvas need their enemies. Best object of compassion, your enemies. They need their enemies. In other words, it's like, for me, it's like Lance Armstrong needs the high mountains. You get my point? So we need problems. Like we all talk about how things can be a problem and not a thing. What do we say? It's not a problem, it's a challenge. So you need problems to get a challenge, don't you? It's that logic. You need them. You rely upon challenges to grow. That's the same here. So you need suffering sentient beings. It's a concept that unless you analyze it like this, you just don't understand why it's under the heading reliance. It sounds weird. You get my point now? We're communicating now? Yep. Good. Thank you very much.
Selfish desire or desire of the...
Give me the mic.
Sorry. I feel like when you want to help others to grow, that means you're creating that gap.
What, darling? Sorry.
Your desire is keep creating the suffering people suffering.
No,
for
why
you
is
to
that?
grow.
No, not like that. That's not how I'm
No.
saying it. So tell me what you think I said. This is really good. Thank you for bringing it up. What do you think I'm saying?
And I'm feeling that if we need to grow compassion, you're saying that we need people who are suffering.
Yeah.
But I feel like our desire to develop compassion is creating the suffering of other people.
How could it do that? If you're a doctor
Mhm.
and you're trained to help sick people, how is your training to help sick people creating sick people? It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Because if I go into looking into our government,
Sorry, what, darling?
if we go look into our government, we are already
Go looking into what?
into our governing policies. We are already creating cancer. We are already creating diseases.
Who is?
Our government.
Our government's creating cancer.
Our
Sorry,
food.
what?
Our medical, our pharmacies.
Okay. Well, let's keep it simple here. Forget our pharmacies and our medical professions and their weird drugs that cause people to become junkies. Forget all that. But in general, keep it really simple. Do you understand what compassion is? How would you call compassion? What's compassion?
Caring for other people.
Thank you.
as
Whom would
equal.
you care for?
Anybody who needs help.
Thank you. Who needs help is a person who's suffering. Right?
Mm.
No?
I didn't understand.
A person has a headache.
Yeah.
And you say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. That's compassion, would you agree? So you'd like to help them, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be qualified, don't you? And it means you know which pill to give them. That's called compassion, and then it's called action. So you have if you want to grow your compassion to become more powerful to help many people, if you never met a suffering person, your compassion could never grow because you'd never have... compassion in your heart depends upon a person who's sick. So in that sense, they're saying, we rely upon sick people. In that sense, we're relying upon suffering people. But if you want to grow compassion, you have to meet sick people. And if you're a brave person, you will go and join the Doctors Without Borders and go to the war zones and really pull your sleeves up and really want to help people, won't you?
Yes.
Well, then you need suffering people to become able to be helping others. It's very simple. It's a weird way of putting it, but you see my point. Thank you. Are you sure we're communicating?
Yes.
Thank you, darling. Yes.
Is there then virtue
Wait for the mic, please. Please wait for the microphone.
It's okay.
We're streaming.
Donna, keep going, Donna. You'll get there.
Is there then virtue in becoming a sufferer to offer opportunities to others to practice compassion?
Well, it's a bit twisted, isn't it? That sounds a bit self-piteous, a bit sort of arrogant. I'll get sick for your benefit so you can help me. I'll stop working so you can work and help me. I don't think so, darling. I've got a feeling. But thank you, but that's another interesting point. If you're a bodhisattva and you're really full of compassion, gone beyond ego, and you've got some karma with certain people, and you really want them to create merit for their sake, it's got to be very pure, you'd be reborn as their sick child. Yes, in that case. And you wouldn't just be out of selfishness to do it, you'd be so delighted. And another way too, when you take the bodhisattva vows, and it's a good point actually, when you take the bodhisattva vows, there are 46 secondary vows, and they're all very precise instructions. They're very detailed, and it's marvelous to learn them. So they're all divided up into the 6 perfections. So one group of the vows is related to helping you practice generosity, but also to help you help other people practice generosity. So let's say you ring me up and ask me for dinner, and I'm your friend, and I'm just lazy. Oh, darling, I'm too busy tonight, you know. So I just broke a vow because I prevented you from creating the generosity of offering me a meal. So yes, but you don't do it out of a selfish reason. So then if I'm truly trying to practice my bodhisattva vow, even if I don't feel like it, I would happily go and have your dinner. Delighted that you're creating the generosity. So it doesn't come out, I wouldn't go and say, oh, I'm coming so you can create generosity. It wouldn't be a self-centered reason. That'd be very powerful, really bodhisattva level. Do you understand my point? So it's a good point actually, but coming from a very pure motivation. Do you understand? Yeah. So someone else, we can continue. So we're clear about reliance, the 2 points. So now you think of those who you've harmed. You think of your boyfriend you're mean to, you cheated on the baby. I think of the child, the baby who came to my womb. Due to their karma, yes, it's a very good point. Let's discuss it for a second, okay? This is how the dynamics of karma work. So there's this being who popped into my womb, and I always tell this story, and I always say that I always warn you. I don't want to give it too much detail. I don't want to make you embarrassed, but I find it very helpful. Many women I talk to know the second they're doing whatever they're doing, they say, oh my God, I just got pregnant. I know many women. Some women in this room, you knew you were pregnant at that moment? Yeah, me too. One of my friends, her daughter was staying at her house with her husband while their house was getting fixed. And the daughter came sailing into the kitchen one morning to breakfast. Hello, Mum, I'm pregnant. And the mum said, when did you know? Oh, 45 minutes ago. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that? So I knew that second. I'm not saying too much detail. You know what I mean. Oh, no, I said to myself, I'm pregnant. Do you understand? It's very interesting. That's when the consciousness goes. That's Buddha's point. The consciousness goes in at the time of conception, joins the egg and sperm right that second. So in my case with this abortion, when I was 23, I always think about it as a good example of how karma works. This consciousness who's got karma with me, this being who died recently, he's got strong karmic history with this particular person, maybe with the boy as well, who knows, obviously with both of us. And the karma, we did what we did, and the consciousness came, right that second. But at the same time, even as I knew they were there, I didn't call it a consciousness, I didn't think those words then, I was a hippie, I'd given up being a Catholic, I had no other view about what it was. But that second, even then, I knew I'd have an abortion. In other words, from my side, I knew so clearly I didn't want this thing that was called a baby at the other end. I wasn't mean or anything. The karma was so strong between, and this is the dynamics of karma. This implies that the karma of this being who came to me had such strong karma to die from having killed me, that it was uncomplicated. I didn't agonize about it. I just knew I didn't want what would come out the other end, a person. Do you see what I'm saying? I didn't think about it as a person. I wasn't in tears. I just knew I didn't want it. So even very curious, it's very amazing how karma works. It was 1968, and just then, the British National Health, which is free medical care, no comment, had just approved of abortions. So, of course, at the time, I thought, oh, aren't I lucky? Do you understand? Aren't I lucky, I thought. I was had to fight for it and pay $4,000, I know at the time. You paid massive money at the time to get an illegal one. So I'm thinking, aren't I lucky, I thought, So I went straight to the hospital, the Charing Cross Hospital. They were so kind. They booked me in. The kind nurses gave me a little bed. The doctors did the thing. They pulled the thing out. The poor baby wasn't caught. And this is the karma, again, that is being. They didn't pull it out properly. I did another DNC because they'd pulled it out all mangled. It was a 12-week-old fetus. I'm not being emotional here. I'm not trying to make people nervous. I'm just thinking about the karma, It's very fascinating. So the karma of this being, they had the karma to get killed and was uncomplicated. It would just sail through the whole process. But I do remember when I had to have the second seat, the DNC, I got really depressed, and the kind nurses gave me my own room for a week. It was all free, of course, but I couldn't work out what it was. I didn't know how to articulate it at that time. I was very curious. I was 23, So I always think of that example. The karma this being had, me wanting to kill it having the karma to get killed. Another friend of mine was very fascinating. He told me this. He was a German guy. And this was mind-blowing, very fascinating. All his life, his mother told him when he's an adult that she had decided to abort him. She had the hospital booked. She was in the hospital. She was in her gown. She was ready to go. She turned the handle of a door to go to the next step. And she said, no, I'm not going to do it. And that was him. He was it blew his mind when he realized this, you know. That means one of the reasons she stopped is because he didn't have the karma to die. It's so dynamic, you know. And this is the way the karma is. It's like a tennis match. Don't be guilty. It's very much interdependent. It's like a tennis match. You play the best. You play to the extent that the other person is playing with you, you know. It's very dynamic. You're in it together. So me and this child, no question, the karma was crystal clear. They were going to die, you know. But this other guy, he didn't have the karma to die, so that almost like the energy that wasn't, the causes weren't there for her to do it. Do you understand what I'm saying here, people? A little bit. Just giving you an example of how karma works. Interdependence. I don't know if I'm helping your mind or not, am I? What?
She had the karma not to kill.
Who?
That boy, the boy that you were talking about.
What?
The mother of the boy apparently didn't have the karma to kill him.
Yeah, she didn't have the karma to kill, but the main cause is because he didn't have the karma to die. That's what I'm saying. That's the reason. I had the karma to kill and everything. She was ready. She was also her participant, my baby. They clearly had the karma to die. So our karma worked perfectly together. Do you get my point?
Yeah.
It's very dynamic.
So
That's why it's so interdependent. That's why guilt is an over-exaggeration. That's why when mothers have guilt. I remember my mother, because our family wasn't, you know, lots of dysfunction, blah, 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 this, daddy this, and blah, blah. Mummies own the whole thing. It's all my fault. That's guilt, isn't it? You, what I'm saying? We own the whole of all the responsibility. And I remember even one time with my mother I couldn't articulate it. I was so furious with her that she was sort of blaming herself for everything that I did. I sort of, excuse me, Mum, I played some role in my life. Back off. Are you getting my point here? Guilt is really irresponsible. It's really self-centered. It's really arrogant. You're not giving that other person any role in their decisions. And it just exaggerates everything. So, of course, I take responsibility for that abortion. But the person's karma was an equal participant in it. And this is where you know, like I always think of Andre and your boy died. They're his boy in a bar. Another boy comes along. No one's expecting to kill anybody. But this other boy just, boom, a knife, wasn't it? And he died. So this boy, can you imagine the suffering? I mean, I remember when Andre was reported that night on the news. How do you feel about the death of your son? Andre expressed compassion for the boy who killed his own son. Because you can tell he wasn't a monster. He wasn't a psycho. He was this boy in a bar who got annoyed. And his son died. So the karma was there between them. So if that boy, probably with guilt and shame, no doubt, who knows where he's at now, overwhelmed by the shame and guilt of killing Andre's son. But the Andre's son had that karma to be killed. You just have to blink at a person, sometimes they'll die. But guilt thinks, I did all of it. And then we all think, oh, he's an innocent victim. No, there's no such thing as an innocent victim. If you get the point I'm making. So that's why with the view of karma, you don't want to destroy yourself. You know the other person plays a role. You don't think, oh, well, it's not really my fault after all. No, you take responsibility. You have incredible regret the harm you did. But you see that's a dynamic. It's like two of you in this together. Are you with me, people? Yeah. Then there's less weight and pain and neurosis and self-centeredness like we have with guilt, you know? Yeah. Mike, please. Donna, you're moving too slowly. Come on, Donna.
So when you're talking about the let's look at the example of the mother who chose not to get the abortion.
That's right.
She, while the child had the karma to live.
That's right.
Wasn't there also a free will, a choice
no such thing
made?
So, okay, I hear what you're saying.
So does that mean that there's no free will?
No. That's right. So I always ask, I have to control myself when I hear this question, and I'll try and control myself. Let's analyze the evolution of the concept free will. Do you know where it comes from? No, you don't, do you? I'll tell you. Okay, Jesus Christ. I'm not being rude, I love Jesus. But for some reason it's become a scientific reality. We all buy into this concept of free will. analyze that phrase first of all, it belongs to Jesus. So this is not the Buddha's view. Straight away, but even without that, analyze the concept of what is free. Really analyze it. It's powerful. What's the concept of free will? Think carefully. What do you mean by free will? We don't analyze, we just spout it out. Wait, let him say what he thinks first. Wait, let him think. Let him do his first. What do you think free will means? Free.
I think
free. Free is my question. Free.
It's a action. That's the will part.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, so the
Free.
free is, I think, comes from the idea of freedom, that there's no other forces in play.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's not, Buddha says everything dependent arising. It's unbelievably intimate and inextricable. So in other words, if you're playing Federer in tennis, you cannot say, I have the free will to play as good as Federer, if you don't. So your ability to hit back to Federer, first according to your capacity, but it's massively dependent on Federer's skill. So the interdependence of those two, the equal participants. In my case, this person had the karma to be, everything worked in their favor to die, if you put it that way. Everything supposedly worked in my favor to do the killing. Nothing stopped me. There was no obstacle. This woman didn't even know why she stopped. But this is the power of karma. And the boy in the womb didn't have any say in it either. Do you understand? It's interdependent. So free will is a meaningless, respect, a meaningless concept. Will, a decision to say, I will, that is a dependent arising. And let me give a simple example. Do you have, in theory, does everybody okay, people who aren't tone deaf, but do people in general who aren't tone deaf have the ability to learn music? In general, would you say yes? So what is it dependent upon? First thing, what is that mainly dependent upon?
How much they practice.
No, more fundamental. Speak in the mic. More fundamental. More fundamental.
The desire to learn?
Not even more than that. More fundamental. The tendency to play music. And why have you got the tendency to play music? Because you played it before. So everything's dependent arising. There's no such thing as free means without depending on anything, and that's exactly the Buddha's view. Nothing, and that's emptiness. Nothing can exist like that. And that's the arrogance of like, oh, look at that lazy person without a job. They've got the choice to get a job any time they like. No, they don't. There's no capacity in their mind to even come up with a concept of going for a job. It just doesn't arise in their mind. That's why, and second, they have no generosity karma. Even if they work 50 hours a week, they can't get a job or get money. There's no karma there.
So then, the choice to renunciate, to practice the
is
Dharma,
dependent upon the tendency to even see it as a possibility.
So it would happen. There was no other choice. It was always going to be.
No, who said that? Who told you that? Why does that assume there? Why is that assumed?
Because if it's dependent on
excuse
causes.
me. At any given moment, you might have a tendency to play music, but another tendency to play football might be stronger. It's not a question of no choice. If there's no choice to be enlightened now, that's extreme. That's no dependent arising either. You've got to exercise in many parts of your being. The decision to do it every day, the discipline to get up in time, to make sure you get the right food, the right piano, the right teacher. There's many conditions, which is why it's so hard to practice, because we give in to the other tendencies to be lazy and can't be bothered. There's many, many, many factors at play there.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
I understand.
Yes, at the back.
Choice.
Oh. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
Choice.
I mean, to me, choice is my free will. I mean, I've got to have all the causes and conditions.
Can you speak close to the mic?
We have causes and conditions for everything.
That's right.
And we have multiple lives, so we have all the causes and conditions to do
But
everything.
not always at the same time, though.
But they're there.
Yeah, I know, but that's
They're
not,
there.
But that's not much helpful now. We're
They
talking-
are there, and something happens,
Yeah,
and
right.
then I make that choice. as to how to respond.
That's right.
So that is, in my interpretation
Yeah.
of free,
But what's
that is
free
free
mean?
will.
But the Buddhist view of free implies no conditions and no causes. That implies
Well,
absolute. That implies any given moment you can choose never to kill. But let's say you've only ever have it. Let's say you're a fisherman now. Can we say that? Let's take an
Sure.
example. You're a fisherman now. So what's happening is the tendency to kill is prevailing quite strongly in your life. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Yeah. So if someone suggests to you maybe you shouldn't kill fish, depending on how strong your tendency to kill fish is at this moment, that is the main factor that determines whether you can even hear those words. Would you agree with that?
No.
What's the main factor that will cause you to hear those words?
I have all sorts of causes and conditions. I have good
No, I'm giving you a really... the general point you're making is absolutely perfect, and I agree with it. Every sentient being in the universe has Buddha nature. Every sentient being has all the causes and all the conditions, but the simple point is that not at the same time. So when you have a tendency to kill fish, you can't, at this moment, depending on how strong that tendency is, as much as I can help you to do it, you will not be able to access the tendency to not kill. So it is not free. It's dependent arising.
We may
Do you see my
disagree.
point?
No, I don't, because I happen to come sit in Robbie's class, and
Right.
all of a sudden I learned something,
Uh-huh.
and I put that in my toolkit.
That's right.
So the next time something happens, I have
Right.
my devil
Okay.
and my angel.
Can I use it? Can I ask you a simple? Let's say, have you noticed that people accuse Mr. Trump of lying? Have you heard about that?
I think so.
Okay. Do you think he's lying himself? Do you think that he might be lying? So if Mr. Trump has free will, like you're suggesting it, then you can walk up to Mr. Trump and say, Mr. Trump, would you like to stop lying, please? So you're assuming he will do that immediately.
That's not, has nothing, Mr. Trump and what he does has nothing to do with me.
I'm not being personal here. We're discussing all of us, darling, not you personally.
Okay.
We're discussing everybody. So you would agree that depending on how strongly Mr. Trump has a tendency to lie, he is unable to hear your suggestion to stop lying. Would you accept that? Would you accept that?
Yeah.
There you go. So we're agreeing now.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah, come.
I'm having a little trouble formulating my question, but
Yeah, go
if
for
you'll
it.
be
Try.
patient with me, I will try.
Sure, darling.
So I've been doing a lot of purification practice. I do this every day. And I read this prayer after I do the 35 confessions to the 35 Buddhas. And in the prayer, it says that the non-virtuous actions I've engaged in or caused others to engage in causes me and sentient beings to be born in the hell realms.
Say the words again.
This is hard.
Go, darling, go.
It says, the non-virtuous actions I've engaged in.
Which one? Can someone else read for her? I want to hear them very clearly. Point them out, darling. Which prayer is it? Is this called which prayer? Can you please tell me which prayer this is?
This is
the confession prayer you say.
Oh, the compassion prayer after you've done the long
Right.
recitation.
Yeah, in the confession
okay,
prayer.
what does it say?
It says
10 non-virtuous actions I have engaged in, caused others.
causes me
Oh.
and sentient beings to
Caused-
be born in the hell realms.
Oh, causes me and.
Can I need to see it, please? I mean,
Sure.
I've got a version of that, but I just don't. I can't hear it properly.
I'm on
Page 50.
Let's see it.
at the top of page 50.
So she's reading through.
Page 50. Okay.
So
Let me see the start. Let me start.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I understand. I understand.
ellipsis and then.
I understand.
So my question is.
Wait, I have to read it, darling.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so your question?
Okay. So the question that I have is that if my actions can cause other beings to be born in hell,
Of course they can.
what is the interaction then? Because
'Cause
what
other
I hear
actions
you
can al-
saying is that we all create our own karma,
We do, yes.
and that it's up to me
Yes.
where I
Yeah, but we can all.
And,
we're-
but
and I
this
hear-
seems to be
yeah.
saying that
Yeah.
if I perform a non-virtuous action,
Yes.
then someone else goes to hell.
I understand, darling. I understand. I think when we think about analyze it, the meaning is very clear. Can you see how by you being compassionate and kind, you can completely help a person transform their life? Can you accept that? Isn't that called compassion? Can you accept that you can possible to do that? Let's say you've got a close friend and she adores you and trusts you, and she's an alcoholic, and you've been an alcoholic, and then she trusts you and she turns to you and she starts to rely upon you and you become her mentor, and by you being compassionate and wise, she can actually learn to give up being an alcoholic. Can you accept that's possible?
See, I don't know now because this whole karma
No,
thing. You're saying that
Can
she
you-
may
no,
not have the karma to hear it.
That's fine. I'm talking about the possibility. Have you ever seen in your life, have you ever been kind to somebody who's helped them? Have you ever helped to somebody in your life?
I don't know anymore.
I think you're being a bit extreme.
I don't. That's what I'm saying.
No,
This is
I'm
my
asking you
problem,
simply, so
like-
forget all this. Because when you answer my question, we'll then go to the next step and the next step, and then you'll understand me. So, have you ever been kind to anybody?
I think so.
Okay. Have you got children or a mother or a sister or something?
Yes,
Like children, for example?
I have children.
Okay. And you've been kind to your children?
Yes,
Do you accept that your job as a parent is to guide them
yes,
in the right direction? Do you
Yes.
agree with that?
Yes.
And do you accept that your guidance, you can then see sometimes that based upon their ability to respond to your guidance, they have made good choices. Can you see that's possible? You see that's the result. You can see that, can't you? Now, please, one step at a time, precious girl. I've got to do it really incrementally and very slowly, and we'll take different discussions as we go. Have you seen that's true?
I believe that's true.
Good, thank you. Now, have you seen in some cases some mothers have really psychotic, unhappy, suffering children who, no matter what advice the mother gives, the child still goes down the direction of killing or raping or becoming an alcoholic? Have you ever heard of examples like that?
I've heard of that.
Thank you. So, in one case, the interdependence of you and your daughter, let's say, because you're both in this together and she's got capacity to access her virtue and you have got the capacity to access your virtue, and these two come together and she responds to your goodness and she goes down the right track. That's a way of putting it. Do you agree with that? Okay. In another case, a mother who's a good mother like you gives the same advice as you, but their child is a rapist. Their child is a pedophile, which they're born with themselves. And no matter what advice you give, their poor child is suffering so terribly that no advice makes any difference whatsoever because their tendencies are so strong and they then continue to harm sentient beings. Do you think that's possible?
Yes.
Thank you. We have another scenario. When you are really negative and destructive and you have a child, and that child is born themselves with really negative, destructive tendencies, and you together become alcoholics, and you together steal and lie, is that possible?
Yes.
Thank you. You led that sentient being to hell. And in the other case, you led that sentient being, the good case, you led them to virtue and goodness, because everything is interdependent, and we impact upon each other all the time. So that's an explanation, sweetheart. Does that help your mind?
I hope so. Okay, so I don't really understand the interdependence bit completely, obviously, because it seems as if we're saying that if we have the karma for something to happen, it's going to happen regardless of what anybody else does.
No, that's not true. That's the whole point about intervening. That's exactly my point. You could be a kind, wise, loving mother, and because your daughter does trust you, she might have a tendency to be an alcoholic, but she responds to your treatment and kindness, and so she does make the right choices because she's relying upon you. That's why we all need good friends so badly. So there can be the karma, and we see it all the time. Two people, one is the boss, one is the leader, and they lead another person to bad. I mean, the first thing most mothers say is that their child got into trouble because they were led by bad people. And this is very easily the truth. Because we're all so susceptible, we're all so weak, we're all so and you could argue. I mean, my friends in prison, numberless occasions I can think of when they were on the streets in Los Angeles, my Mexican friends in Los Angeles, since he's 11 years old, the very first guy who wrote to us, 11 years old, he met gangsters. They led him up garden paths, down the path of gangsters and killing and raping. He didn't kill and rape, but he was in gangs. Then he goes to prison, and then he responds to Buddhist advice, and now he becomes a holy person. In both cases, he was led by others. We are super responsive to others. That's why we have such a powerful responsibility to others, darling. But every one of us has to be responsible for our part of it. It's very you see what I'm saying? So when the bodhisattvas have compassion, bodhisattvas are these high beings who've gone beyond I, beyond ego, beyond attachment, beyond anger, beyond rage. They're hugely compassionate. And when they see a person, let's say, their compassion, that's the level of compassion they have. They realize that their actions in the past when they were negative led many people to follow them. And so they have such sense of responsibility that their compassion is so enormous. Even my actions led other people to make wrong choices and to go to the hell realms. They didn't consciously do it. They didn't do it. It's not each person did it themselves, but we so affect each other, which is why when we realize, I realize with my kind of busy, my bossy nature, and I get overexcited. And that can almost, like, sometimes when I get angry, that can give other people permission to be angry. I've got to be so careful. I've got to be realizing my behavior impacts upon others. And then people go, I can be angry too, seeing as Robina's angry. That's me leading them up a garden path. I've got to be so careful. Do you understand, darling? All the examples I'm giving, I think you do. Don't make it like what you're thinking, like as if, oh my God, what choice is there? And everyone, you understand. It's much more subtle than what you're saying, more nuanced. But you can see the truth of it if we take these little examples.
I guess I have to think about it.
Of course, darling, of course you do. But based upon the examples I'm giving, they're the true, real examples. Not just, hear these words, it's kind of scary.
Two things seem to be diametrically opposed to
Tell
me.
me that.
It seems as if I can't hold the truth of we influence other people and can lead them down the path to destruction, and at the same time hold it as true that I can't have any influence over a person who doesn't have the karma for it.
Why is that contradictory? Because if you're okay, let me give an example. If Jonathan is a musician, and you come to him and say, please teach me music, but he discovers you are tone deaf, he can't teach you music. You don't have the capacity to hear it. Can't you hear that? It's very simple. One time, one friend of mine, who was a fisherman's wife, she fell in love with a fisherman, so she ran his business. And then one day she used to go fishing with her girlfriend in the deep waters in Queensland, and they'd catch these big fish from way deep down. And one day she went fishing. I met her at a Buddhist course. One day she went fishing, and she caught this big fish, and they come up from the ocean, and it comes into the boat. And then that second, she said, another big fish leapt into the air, circled the boat, and she thought was looking into the boat. She was convinced it was the wife of the fish, and she said, I gave up fishing from that second. Now, that means she was ripe and ready from an event that probably happened all the time, but suddenly the karmic seed she had to not kill was triggered by that action. That action, which was latent in her mind. Now, my point is this. Another example, every year in Maine, in Boston, Nick Rebush of, the Lama Wisdom Archive, they always go buy lots of lobsters on certain Buddha days, and they save the lobster. One year, bought 472 lobsters, whatever, from Maine or wherever. So then they happen to be on the local television news, rejoicing they saved these lobsters' lives. Well, the local fishermen were outraged. How dare these arrogant Buddhists? So they called the television news, and they went and caught 472 lobsters, exactly the same number, and they're going to show those bloody Buddhists. Okay, Americans don't say bloody. So that event, for them, increased their wish to kill fish. So it all depends on which karma is most strong at any given moment.
So I'm thinking that you're saying that our karma determines how we respond to the events, but it doesn't necessarily determine the events, but it's how we would be able to receive them?
Say a bit more, I don't quite get you.
I'm wondering if the way for me to understand this is to say that the events themselves may not be determined by our karma, but our capacity to interpret them and perceive them in a certain way is determined by the karma?
No, the events also are the result of our karma.
So how could it even happen that someone was presented with an opportunity for something unless it was in their karma.
Of course it's in their karma. Of course it is. Everything we experience, everything that you see, as Lama Zopa says, everything we experience, every tiny thing you see, I'm going to spell it out now, every child killing an ant, every person raping this person, every person being generous to that person, a sunny day, a pleasant rose growing, everything out there is your karmic appearance. And every second of that is an opportunity for you to, with an analysis of karma, to interpret it properly and to know how to navigate and learn to practice to become a Buddha. Or if you don't have any view and have no view of karma, you just respond like a lemming over a mountain and just respond out there and have hate and anger and jealousy and love and all the rest, or kindness for that matter, with no awareness whatsoever. Everything is a result of our past karma. Everything we see, everything, and then our interpretation of it is as well. Absolutely.
Okay. Can I ask you one
Absolutely,
other question
sweetheart.
related
It's so
to...
helpful. All this is so helpful.
This is related to the purification practice. I just don't understand.
Yes.
So we say that we have to do everything ourselves, like to help ourselves. We're reliant on our own selves to save us. There's no, God up there that's going to just come down and make everything right for us. We're reliant on ourselves.
But we have support, don't we?
And that's my question.
The
So
Buddhas
when I'm doing this purification practice
Yeah.
to these 35 Buddhas, the visualization is that they are actually taking away my negative karma?
No.
What is it?
No.
What is it supposed
You're
to be?
using them like a doctor.
And what is it that's actually supposed to happen?
Your mind is purifying your mind. But you're relying upon like when you go to the doctor and they give you advice and they give you medicine, you take that medicine and you do the work. And so you may be even delighted. You think, oh, my doctor's going to be so happy that I just, succeeded and my cancer stopped. So because we're all human, we need somebody to rely upon. We need somebody to refer to. We need somebody to think about. We need somebody to be devoted to. We're human beings with a human heart. So the function of the Buddha is the same as the doctor. You do the regretting, you do the purifying, you do the vowing not to do again, you do the visualizing, you've joyfully imagined Buddha sending nectar into your heart. It's your mind doing it in dependence upon relying upon this idea of the Buddha. It's like the method you're using to give you courage to do it, but you're doing the work.
But so I do all that work, but then that, if I understand it properly, it actually says that Buddha then removes this?
No, Buddha never removes anything.
I don't
You do
know.
it. You do it. You do it. Your doctor does not remove your cancer. You do it in dependence upon using the doctor. You might even be, like if you're if you're Jonathan's your music teacher, we all know we love some of our teachers. Have you liked some of your teachers? Do you have mentors in your life? Like your music teacher, for example. I mean, I know, like when you love your music teacher, they're sitting at home practicing, you're thinking your music teacher's sitting on your shoulder and you're so happy to please your music teacher. You can't wait to get back to your next class to tell Jonathan. That's how we use the Buddha. We have a human heart. We are dying for love. We need to use the Buddhas. That's why we have gurus in human bodies as a manifestation of the Buddha, because we're human beings. We do the work. You do the playing. You rely upon Jonathan. You rely upon Bach's music, you rely upon Steinway's piano, but you do the work, baby. And then when you're humble, you will thank Jonathan, and you will thank Bach, and you will thank the Steinway. But you did the work, baby. It's like that. You hear Lama Zopa, all he does is honor the Guru, honor the Buddha, honor this, but he does the work. But we rely upon, because we've got human hearts, and we need to rely upon tools and things and people to help us do it.
So what should I be envisioning these Buddhas actually doing during all these prostrations?
You are using a visualization of them, and you are imagining them sending light and nectar purifying you. But it's your mind doing it. It's your mind doing it.
So instead of a taking away, I should be envisioning a giving of this pure light and nectar.
You're visualizing using their energy to purify your negativity.
Thank you. Yes.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay. What's your name?
I'm Karen.
You're
sorry.
fantastic.
I'm so difficult.
It's absolutely brilliant what you're saying. You're analysing, you're thinking it through, and this is why we have to think about it. In one sense, I tell you, devotion in Jesus and devotion in the Buddha, in one sense, is exactly the same. But so is devotion in Jonathan as your music teacher. There's not a fraction of difference. The difference intellectually is the concept of God being the one who created you, so whom you're, because you know who then punishes and rewards, that concept. That's where the difference is, and I point that piece out. But in the end, the devotion in somebody is the same, whether it's your music teacher, whether it's your mummy, whether it's your friend, or whether it's Buddha, or whether it's Jesus. Same deal. We need someone to rely upon, but we do the work.
Okay, thank you.
You understand, darling? Thank you so, so much. So helpful, really so helpful. Thank you. Yeah, go on, people. John, somebody, yeah, more. Where? Yes, go, baby.
So, the Earth itself, the planet at large, the karma that we have as beings at this time, a few different things here. So in the linear sense of things, perhaps we have been here before at this precipice on the planet environmentally, karmically, and perhaps there are things that cannot change because of that karma, and or perhaps we will have a critical mass of energies that are positive or healing, and we will avoid killing ourselves and the planet. And so, yeah,
you know, I think, okay. I mean, it's not all seems so abstract when we say it, but the Buddhist view, remember, universes and sentient beings are beginningless. So taking that view, as mad as it sounds, it clearly implies that this human planet is like a millionth of a second in the long term. So eons ago, before this human planet, if our minds are beginningless, a human birth was a much more subtle level of existence. We did not have gross bodies because our minds were so high. There was no gross attachment, no gross anger. We had only mostly access to virtue, which is our main human quality. So we had therefore subtle light bodies. This is not on this planet, believe me. So in terms of long, big pictures, cosmic as it sounds, so then delusions began to grow. Gradually delusions began to grow. Gradually delusions became, and then that impacted upon our wind elements, which is we have these subtle elements, and that began to pollute our wind elements, which in turn began to grow bodies. And then at some point, this planet's already been growing for a few billion years, and at some point we pop onto the planet looking like a bunch of apes. But all this has been coming for eons. It's like long-term history. This planet's been coming for eons. And so we come along, and the karma we're creating with environmental karma of another rebirth can happen even next life. The karma of intentions and things that we do can even happen next life. The karma of even how people treat us can be next life. But environmental karma, the causes for us to have an environment now that's polluted and going downhill fast, is from 1 million lifetimes ago. So it's a little bit late. We're sort of 1 million lifetimes later. We're too late to grab it. So we do our best here. It's like a bit like Tibetans in Tibet right now. They know they've lost Tibet, basically. But they know every single action they do that's virtuous, it won't give them Tibet, but it'll create another Tibet for the future. That's the point. Can you hear my point?
Yes.
It's never ending. So you never give up. It's okay, this planet will sink into the ocean. Of course it will. But everything we do will continue to grow more virtue and more clarity, so we can have some optimism. Just to keep moving. There's no choice but to practice virtue, but not to despair, ever. Bodhisattvas think in terms of eons, His Holiness says. This is why this path's insane if you think of it like this. But it's kind of very uplifting if you think about it, because it's no matter how bad it gets, you have no choice but to practice wisdom and virtue. And that can only ever keep creating future and universes, future happiness, future this, future good. There's never a reason to despair, no matter what. That's the only view to have if we take this big picture in mind.
Yeah. Thank you. Spent my life feeling every bit of what's happening to nature
I understand.
Yeah, and you know, along my journey of waking up,
Yeah.
I constantly have the question of elders.
Yep.
The same question over and over, and I haven't found that level of peace in face of that
I understand.
yet.
Yeah.
And I think you just helped me take a step.
Yeah, I understand.
So
It's a
thank
much
you.
big long-term view.
Yeah.
As His Holiness says, bodhisattvas think in terms of eons. That's why they're so perky and happy. You understand? Because they never give, even though they're full of compassion, they just never give up. Because everything we think and do and say sows seeds. And why not be virtuous? It's going to ripen as something or other in the future, which can only be good. This is the
Thank you.
logic of karma. Big picture, long term. Good. Yes, people. Go, sweetheart.
Going back to your example with Karen, so a student's
Bit closer to the mic, darling.
okay. Going back to your example with Karen, a student's excitement to tell your teacher or your guru how well you're doing, you know, learning a subject or learning Bach.
That's right.
Would that be a form of attachment?
Sure it is, but you know, you're using it on the way to the path, baby. You can't be without attachment until you're ready. So you use it. On the Bodhisattva path, you use it happily. It sounds a bit weird to say that. But the Bodhisattva path, you know, it's like, the job is we've got to give up attachment. No matter what, we have to give it up. It's going to be a long, long time. You've got to wait. So on the way, when your virtue increases, If you've got, the best way to get enlightened is give up sex, drugs, rock and roll, husbands, mortgages, and all the rest, and go to the mountains, go to the forest. There's no shortcut, baby. But 99% of us won't do that. So what are you going to do? Be depressed? No. You're going to have a baby. You're going to have a wife. You're going to have a husband. You're going to have sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever you want. But within the fact that you're going to do that, which is driven by attachment, you at least add virtue into the mix. The more virtue into the mix, the more it makes the non-virtue less. Virtue has the power to make the non-virtue less. Only non-virtue on its own, you might as well die. But add virtue, add compassion, add bodhicitta, add wisdom into it, and that mitigates, lessens. So it's skillful means. And we need devotion. Yeah. Just to have a relationship of devotion is not the same as attachment, excuse me. And because we're human and have human hearts, as Lama Yeti says, we are dying for love. Because we are a separate sense of a separate pathetic self-pity person right now, that's who we are, then to have a person you can rely upon like a good musician, like ordinary example, you'd be just so delighted to find a Jonathan whom you can rely upon, who does want the best out of you. It's marvelous to use that connection and become close to that person, because that's how you become like that person. And it's the same with the Buddha. It's using, and then you drop away that stuff when you don't need it. It's using our human nature. It's a way of putting it.
Okay.
We're human with a heart. The real benefit, forget about all the Lamrim, do this, don't do that, just, you know, all the things about guru devotion. Just know we're human and need to have a person to rely upon. We said to rely upon peanuts, rely upon somebody who's worthy of your heart. So you choose your guru very carefully. As Babonka says, you're going to end up like them, so choose them very carefully. And then you rely upon them, and they won't let you down. That's pretty powerful on this planet.
Yeah, because I've always thought it was kind of unrealistic to not have attachment unless you did leave everything.
Well, it is unrealistic to have non-attachment when you've got attachment, but you can be skillful and wise and nuanced about it. If it is only attachment to your guru, it won't last long. You'll get bored with them and chuck them out, because attachment is not sustainable. So you make it virtuous connection. Call it devotion, but valid, based on intelligence and wisdom and compassion. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, what else, people? Go. 30, okay, keep moving. Go. Talk.
Yeah. In relation to the answer that you gave Karen, you posited, I think, 3 different scenarios in terms of karmic connections.
Yeah.
One of them was a caring mother that had a child who nevertheless became unruly, perhaps violent and destructive.
Mm-hmm.
How would you characterize the karmic connection between those two?
Well, obviously the karmic connection, that's all. That's how they got born to each other. Look at poor old poor old Hitler's mum. What does she do? She must have had some karmic connection with this fellow. So he gets born to her womb. You must have some, every pedophile's got a mum. There's karma between people. Doesn't have to be good. If the mother, just because the mother's good doesn't mean they've got to have a good child. There's karma between them. That's all. That's it. That's very. You don't only go to a mother you've got karma with, and it happens to be maybe the suffering of the mother. I mean, I remember reading the Columbine kids a couple of years ago. It was the 20th anniversary. I remember reading in the New York Times a memoir of the mother of one of them. And you could see the torture, the nightmare. Her suffering was unbearable. Her life was destroyed. People gave her death threats. Their marriage broke up because she, classically, being a typical person who realized who thought she created that boy, created a monster, she was tortured by this experience, She really believed she created this monster, and she agonized the whole time. What did I do to do? She didn't do anything wrong. She just had and so you could argue from her point of view, her suffering was broken reputation, destroyed relationships, losing her boy, being abused, being attacked, being criticized. That's her karma. Nothing to do with what her boy did. It's a different experience. Are you seeing my point?
Yes, but you also mentioned that it's like playing a game of tennis, so there's an interaction between the two. So does she have the karma?
No.
Okay.
That's when there's a particular one of me and my baby that I'm killing. She was the mother. She had nothing to do with him killing people. That was a different. That's not the tennis player one there. She had no relationship to that. She was in no part of that. She had no role in that. She happened to have the karma to give birth to this beautiful boy of hers who went and did these monstrous things. So all her suffering was on the result of that, of her being blamed and her blaming herself. That was her karma. There wasn't a tennis player one there. That's different.
Okay.
That's different.
Okay.
That's when they did something to each other. Can you see my point?
Yeah. Okay.
That's different.
Okay. I wanted to clarify
So that's
the
why
difference.
when our mummies, even like Karen, if you've got good children, all mummies naturally think I did a good job. But can you imagine the nightmare? This poor mother, she did just as good a job as Karen, but look at her boy. But it wasn't because of her. That's when if you have the view of karma, your heart breaks for your child, but there's nothing more you could have done. If you could have, you would have, I promise. But then mother's torture, and that's why my mother's guilt was infuriating to me automatically, because it was like insulting me as if I played no role in my life and she was this wicked mother who made it all go bad. No, the 9 of us were in this tennis match together. Do you understand? We all played our role, so we take responsibility for our role. And your heart break. I mean, my father was a bit naughty. My heart broke for my daddy. But each of us played our own bit in it. All together, this karmic connection with 9 people, quite intense. But guilt says, I did it all, I'm a bad mother. Or we blame our mother. Our mother did it all, she's evil. This is outrageous. No logic to any of that. It's not nuanced enough. It's not clear enough. It's just dumping on people, dumping on yourself or dumping on others. You understand, people? Are we communicating here? It's a very helpful conversation, isn't it? Yes. Thank you, Karen. All your fault. So let's finish purification before we finish. And I was going to talk about the mind. I might even be able to do that. Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, go, darling.
So I'm going back to the death and to come to regret, because Christianity always says that even Buddha died. Buddha died.
Died.
But Jesus rose from the dead.
Oh, okay, so sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you said we are not the sinners.
What, darling?
You said we are not the sinners, but Christianity considers as our sin.
No. What I said, exactly what I meant by that was that Christians have a really good saying: don't blame the person, the sinner, blame the action they did. And that's the meaning about guilt. We say, I am bad. Okay. No, my killing is bad. My anger is bad. That's what I'm saying. It's a more nuanced way of putting it, of being more precise.
Okay.
Do you understand?
So
go on.
Then coming to regret, they always say Jesus died because of our sin.
Yeah.
And that puts guilt on us.
Okay. So then the question.
So I'm thinking, how long will it take to get the guilt out of killing Jesus?
Yeah, I can't answer that because I don't have any of that view. That's not my view. You can't ask that question. You've got to go to one of the churches to ask that question. It's not my business. I have no knowledge about that explanation at all whatsoever.
Okay,
thank you very much. Okay. So let's continue with purification. So we did the reliance. Number one, you rely upon the Buddha. Number two, you have compassion for those. You want to purify for others' sake. And now here, the next point is, if you're brave enough here, we can have compassion for those who've harmed us. This is a big ask, okay? This is intense. For some of us who really have been brutalized. In this world, people harm us, and in certain ways, in particular cultures, certain people suffer in very particular ways, like we can see in this country, like in every country. There's going to be some group of people who suffers at the hands of others. Just, you name it. You're going to see it. So that can be very intense. If we're brutalized and harmed and put down all our lives, it's very hard to have compassion for the people who've harmed us. And that, as I said, maybe on Thursday or Friday, I forget when I said it, maybe last night, that if we really understand that the whole renunciation part of the path, which is the wisdom wing, which is what is implied by regret, when we really understand karma and we really understand our own suffering and we really want to get rid of suffering, and that means we have compassion for ourselves and we know why we are suffering. That is the basis, and I'll go get into this in more detail tomorrow when we talk about compassion. That is the basis for having genuine compassion for others, because we are all in the same boat, countless lifetimes, life after life after life, harming, being harmed, helping, being helped. But we just never get the point that we're doing it. We always think it's just by accident, So then we realize karma for ourselves and have compassion for ourselves, which is regret and giving it up. Then we can see, oh my God, look at those people causing suffering to each other, and you can have compassion. But if we have been brutalized all our lives or harmed recently by somebody, don't force yourself to have compassion if you can't. So if you can, it's amazing. If we can't, that's fine. You leave it there. And why should you have compassion for a person who's harmed you? Because as those young nuns, I quote the story, and I'll tell you again in case you haven't heard it. In 2003, when Richard Gere invited His Holiness to New York, he started to talk to us at the Prison Project in San Francisco about, working on a project about prisoners. Now, in the end, he did his own thing, so he invited 20 former prisoners, all of whom had done some kind of spiritual practice in prison, mostly Buddhism. And a couple of my people were there, and then he invited people like me who worked with people in prison. And it was a marvelous day, a whole cross-section of Americans, black, white, male, female, Puerto Rican, Mexican, long-term prisoners, short-term. It was a very moving day, and they all had wonderful time together. They met His Holiness. It was a fantastic day. And he also invited 2 young Tibetan nuns, who'd sexually abused and tortured in Lhasa, and now had been released and were in America. And they were telling their experiences. And this is a bit, I want to go into again detail here, it's very powerful. So, like I said, I've said during the week and I've said here, that they had the view of karma built in their brain, if you like, in exactly the way we have the view of mummy made us, my mind is the brain, I began in my mother's womb, it's not my fault, etc., 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 etc. That's just how we are. That's their view, and it came from the 7th century when it came to Tibet, and before that several thousand years in India. So that was a view that was embedded in the minds of beings who have that view. So for us it's weird because we've never heard of it before. But for us the materialist view or the Christian view are the views we've had. We just take for granted. So then these young women, it's been part of their culture. 99% of Tibetans are Buddhist, So they're brought up with it. So it's completely within their being. They automatically assume the view of karma. It's not a surprise to them. They don't have to struggle with it. And this is what is very profound. Because of that, they don't have much anger. Hear the philosophy of anger. How dare you do that to me? I don't deserve it. But if you have the view of karma, you literally don't think that. Literally. That's a big shock to us. And you don't have much attachment, because attachment demands that I greedily deserve happiness, whether I deserve it or not. I don't care, it's just my human right. That's irrational. That these Tibetan women, these young women, they know whatever that came to them, they created it. They know that automatically. So from the beginning of this suffering, people with the view of karma genuinely miss out completely on the agony that we have, that we can't get past when bad things happen. We go, why is this happening to me? This is why we go mad, literally go mad, and we can't get an answer to that question. That's why we go crazy. This is a very powerful concept, I tell you. They don't have that view. They know why it's happening, so they get on dealing with it. This is an incredibly powerful point. Really powerful point. So, in the end, first of all, it was evident to all the Americans that maybe you could even argue they suffered more than most of the Americans put together. And secondly, it was clear they didn't have anger. This is not blaming anybody. This is just looking at viewpoints. All of us, the Buddha's saying, all of us have layers and layers and layers and layers of viewpoints deep in our bones that we're brought up with, that we assume are the truth. So all he's doing here is, hey babies, you better start questioning your assumptions. And this is now because we're bringing this big Tibetan Buddhist view, this Buddhist view, into this culture that doesn't have this. It's a big ask, you know. So these young women weren't angry. They were sad, tears. And one of them at the end said, and of course we had compassion for our torturers, because we knew we must have harmed them in the past, and we know they will suffer unbearably in the future. That is the basis of compassion in Buddhism, which is the view of karma, which is why junior school and high school have to be done first before you can begin to have real compassion for every single sentient being. It's really powerful stuff, you know. So we can have compassion for those who harmed us, but don't go there if you're not ready. Don't force yourself. We've got to go where this is, the compassion wing, I always get so intense with it. Because as Pabonka Rinpoche says, you've got to be a suitable vessel, which means you've got to have the wisdom wing first. This view of compassion is so powerful, and if we don't understand it easily, it can destroy us. So we don't go there if we're not ready. We've got to deal with our own pain and suffering first. If you have a person who's been abusing you, hate them as much as you can if you can, but work on it. And when you're ready, you can get there. When you're ready. It's incremental, it's progressive teachings, you know. But it's intensive, it's very heavy, if we can handle it. But when we can do it, it's liberating, because you give up anger, give up attachment. That's clear. That's clear. So next step, the remedy. Like Karen said. One of them is the 35 Buddhas, 72 Buddhas, whatever means you like. Just traditions that have developed over the centuries that are passed down, you know. One of them is one Buddha, one is no Buddha. You can do what you like. There's so many techniques you can use in this third step of the remedy. But basically this particular one, which is a tradition that's been passed down, that's very popular in Tibet, where you visualize the one Buddha called Bodhisattva, who is a manifestation in the tantric aspect, which we'll talk tomorrow, of Buddha, who is Buddha, who is Buddha. Buddha's the same, you know. So you can visualize anything you like there. You can just visualize white light coming and whatever, you know, it doesn't matter. But this particular practice that we would do in these four opponent powers, but it's also these four opponent powers are embedded in the 35 Buddhas as well. It's another practice, you know. There's different techniques that have been passed down over the centuries, that's all. So you'd visualize the same kind of deal as that, nectar coming, and you recite mantra. The Sanskrit sounds that are said to be super powerful. But it's your mind doing it. You rely upon the sound. You rely upon the Buddha. That's all. They're like your prop that you're using as a tool. You, as Lama Zopa says, the more powerfully you powerfully regret, as Lama Yeshe says too, the more the purification is the power of the intensity of your regret, the power of your compassion, the power of your reliance, the power of your remedy, and the power of your resolve, which is the fourth one. It's your mind engaging in it. That is purification. It's your mind that does it. So the fourth one, the most important, as Pabonka Rinpoche says, resolve, the decision to change. Nothing will happen until you decide. So regrets opens the door to it. I did do that. Oh my God, whom can I turn to? Imagine purifying it. I will not do it again. This is common sense. If you're playing the piano, if Jonathan says, play that note, and I play the wrong one, I don't go, oh, I'm going to kill myself, I played the wrong note. Oh, Jonathan, I'm so guilty, I played the wrong note. No, you just play the bloody right note. It fixes it. Oh. Are we communicating? Thank you. So the sooner you grab your mistake, if I've been playing the wrong note for 22 years, then it's much harder to change. Well, Buddha says we've been playing the wrong notes for a few eons. So be humble with yourself, okay? But the quicker you can catch it in the day and you do the quick 4 steps, you see yourself getting angry. Oh, Robina, shut up, don't be ridiculous. I regret that. I have compassion. I say, Vajrasattva, I won't do it again. Right there in a second, you fixed it before it grows. That's the real job. And that you've got to have samadhi to do that. Not quite. You can go a bit sooner. So it's practical psychology. All of it's psychology. But it's so hard to get past the kind of arcane 7th century Tibetan, Indian, God Almighty knows what, It's so hard to hear it. Are we communicating? Good. Okay. Well, that's the junior school and high school over. And no time for no, that's not even high school. That's only junior school. Sorry. High school tomorrow morning. I'm sorry. Yes, darling.
Quick question. Is the same... can you apply the same for...
4 steps.
4 steps for broken vows?
Oh, absolutely, all part of that too. I forgot that. Yeah, they're all same thing. Same thing.
Okay.
Absolutely the same.
Okay.
So this is why we're vows. Where you vow not to kill. I didn't go into the vows actually, but the laypersons' vows are don't kill, steal, or take the ungiven, lie. Just one of the speech. Don't cheat on your partner. Basically, or to steal someone else's, and no intoxicants. So you can take any or all of those when you do take them, when you take refuge, and so then you reiterate those vows every day, and they strengthen. That's the point. So the soon as it's very hard to break a vow, because to break a vow properly, you have to know it's a vow, not care, happily do it, and have no interest in fixing it. That's not often like that. We're just often weak and a bit lazy, So to really break strongly is quite difficult. But to reiterate and strengthen, I will never kill, I will never, that enables you to do it even better the next day. So it's fantastic to do that. What's wrong, darling? You look shocked. You're okay?
No, but if you break one of those vows...
But did you hear what I said? It's quite hard to break a vow. So you mean you happily decide you'd kill your husband, you don't care that you do it, you have no interest in purifying it, and you know it's a vow. I don't think you did anything like that. Did you break it like that, to that degree? Not you personally, but when you hear what it really means to break a vow. We often weaken vows.
Right.
But if we really did break it completely, that demands you
No.
don't care. That's the kind of thing.
No.
Often it's just weakening. Like you see the ant go down the sink and you think, I can't be bothered saving it.
Yeah.
You're kind of a bit lazy to grab it,
Okay.
You see your lazy mind, Or you say a sort of lie, or you kind of sort of take something.
No. You don't sort of kill.
No, you don't sort of kill, that's right.
Yeah.
No. Are we clear? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I think that'll do us today, don't you people? I was going to lead you into meditation, but it's a bit late. I think you're a bit tired. No? Oh, come on. 5 minutes of a meditation. Well, no, I think what I'll do for a few minutes, just to give you a taste of Lama Yeshe, okay? No, I think what I'm going to do, this will get you excited now. This is a chapter called The Benefits of Having Samadhi. Lama Yeshe always liked to get us excited. In the text, they don't often talk about the actual experiential results of doing these techniques. They just give you all the theory of the techniques. But Lama liked to kind of get us inspired, So samadhi is this ability to get single point of concentration that the Hindus invented several thousand years ago. And the Buddha took this technique with him, and they're happy to share, no probs. And it has a living tradition still. It hasn't died yet. People looking like you and me are in the hills or the mountains or wherever they are right now accomplishing this, and have been doing for 3,000 to 4,000 to 5,000 years. So it's a living technique, people, not some abstract thing from India, dead, So Lama tells us, let's just take a few minutes to read this little chapter. Shall I do that? Just to give you some inspiration. So without calm abiding, which is shamatha is the term for the name of the technique that's given to the result, which is this single point of concentration, okay? Also known as samadhi. Calm abiding and samadhi are slightly different, but never mind, we'll think of them as the same. So without calm abiding, we cannot realize Mahamudra. Mahamudra is meaning emptiness, and we're going to go into this tomorrow, okay? I promise. I've been doing all week, I promise, and I will. As I mentioned, to achieve the realization, Mahamudra in this context is a particular technique that's been going back for several thousand years, 100 years, sorry, but it's just known in this way as Mahamudra, Great Seal, but it's referring to the realization of emptiness, non-duality. As I mentioned, to achieve the realization of Mahamudra, the reality of non-duality, we first need to develop calm abiding. In fact, it's not possible without it. We must achieve the subtler levels of consciousness of indestructible, one-pointed concentration, which in Sanskrit we call samadhi. It is difficult to realize non-duality not because it's hiding from us, but because our concepts are so thick. So we must refine our concepts. We must achieve subtle mindfulness, subtle awareness, and subtle clarity. Otherwise, there's no way we can see the unconscious levels of ego grasping an independent self. Not possible. So samadhi is the source of liberation. Without perfect samadhi, then there's no way to become liberated from samsara and no way to achieve enlightenment. There is no exception, whether we are Christian, Muslim, Hindu, or Buddhist. To cut the dualistic view, we need calm abiding, shamatha. But calm abiding is not enough. On the other hand, some people actually think that this state of samadhi, this one-pointed concentration, is all we need in order to cut ego, but that is wrong. Lama Tsongkhapa reminds us that calm abiding alone is not enough to cut the dualistic view. We also need to develop special insight, or vipassana in Sanskrit. In Tibet we call it hlak tong, hlak meaning extra, and tong meaning seeing. We can interpret this to mean that we go beyond seeing conventional reality and achieve the extra seeing of the universal reality of Mahamudra. In other words, we need the two kinds of meditation together, calm abiding and special insight. Nevertheless, even without special insight, the results of samadhi alone are unbelievable, almost unimaginable. When we understand this, when we realize how amazing the results are, we cannot help but to try to develop it. There is no way we become lazy. We will have much energy and make great effort. We won't even worry about eating. I will explain some of the benefits. You go beyond sensory and conceptual consciousness. Well, if you think of that, that's all we posit in our modern view of the brain and psychology. So already radical, okay? As your concentration develops, you will go beyond your body. Your mind will be non-conceptual, so it becomes easy to cut the complex world of the five sense objects, to eliminate the superstitions. In such a unified state, your mind becomes so subtle, so sharp, you can easily eradicate the complex dualistic thoughts. You can touch reality. This is the feature of samadhi. And out of meditation, you can easily deal with your delusions. They are so light, you can stop them immediately. In other words, you no longer have that raging river of thoughts underneath all the time. That has stopped. You are radiant, you are blissful, you are at a level that we can't even conceptualize in modern psychology. And don't think this is like in next life. This is real. You just got to go do it, that's all. You experience bliss. This sounds naughty, doesn't it? Like a sin, you know, bliss, you know. In the subtle state of concentration, you experience bliss, ecstatic bliss, just naturally. The more concentration you have, the more integrated you are, and thus the more rapture, the more bliss you experience. Now listen to this. The point is this. We're going to go into this tomorrow when we get to high school. We'll talk about the mind itself. This is inconceivable to us. It sounds so bizarre, you know, but this is Buddha's view about the very nature of our consciousness. When it's subdued to whatever degree, the degree that it's unencumbered by delusions is the degree just naturally that your mind is happy. So happy is a simple word for bliss, that's all. We've got levels of it. Pleasure, happy, joyful, rapturous, ecstasy. They make us very nervous. They sound like weird, you know. But this is the natural capacity of a human mind, the natural capacity of any mind. And it's the degree to which we don't have delusions, even temporarily, is the degree to which you can experience the natural state of your own mind, which is to be joyful. This is hard for us to hear, but this is what Buddha's telling us, you know. In the beginning, the bliss you experience is physical. which is the grosser level. But as your concentration deepens, as you throw off the layers of blankets of grosser consciousness, you experience bliss exclusively at the mental level. This is because you have stopped perceiving the objects of the five senses and you've closed the door to superstition. All the contradictory concepts have disappeared. Your mind is now crystal clear. Now this is going to be for all the great Hindu yogis over the centuries in their samadhi. This is going to be for any of the Theravadan meditators in the forest who've got single point of concentration. This is going to be any of the Tibetan meditators wherever they are in the mountains, any Westerner sitting up in somewhere other, you know. This is the same for every mind, because this is the technique that's across the board for all of them. The mind is naturally blissful. One of my friends whom I interviewed in Mandala 25 years ago, Venerable Rene, this Swiss monk. He's a serious meditator for like 45 years, you know, and he's done many long-term retreats. And so I interviewed him in Mandala about his 2.5-year retreat at Urselling, our place near Granada in Spain, in the Sierra Nevada there. And it's near our center called Urselling, a place of clear light, where Lama Ursa was born, Lama Yeshe's reincarnation. So he said it was an amazing place. His Holiness blessed it in 1982. He said it reminded him of Tibet. It was so beautiful. So Venerable Rene was there for 2.5 years. So they described the concentration meditation in terms of 9 stages of cultivation. And he said he maybe touched upon the 5th of the 9 stages in that 2.5 years. And he said basically something simple. He said, Robina, there's no question that the joy he experienced in his mind in meditation at that level was infinitely superior to any joy he'd ever experienced through his senses. And this is the simple point that Buddha's making. So because we live at the level of sensory, we don't know anything else. We have conceptuality and we have sensory. So we do know we have pleasure, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow. It's very powerful. We have pleasure, but Buddha would say it's completely gross in comparison with, and that's what he's saying, you know, and the pleasure we have is very disturbed. It's very kind of hysterical pleasure. Even just having a nice piece of cake, the bit of pleasure we have is really just kind of hysterical. But everybody who meditates, they say this bliss is super peaceful, super calm. That we don't know. We just get berserk. We have even the slightest pleasure because our minds are gross. We're living at it like we're a gross level of the senses. That's all we know. We'll discuss this tomorrow. As if you could count every atom. As your concentration gets stronger and you reach ever subtler levels, your mind becomes super powerful. From his own experience, Lama Tsongkhapa says that you can reach a point of such clarity in your meditation that your mind feels almost infinite. Your mind is so clear, so sharp, it's as if you can distinguish all the subtle physical energies. You'll have the courageous thought, I can count all the atoms of the universe. This level of mind is more powerful than even scientific instruments. And he's being serious, okay? When you arise from your meditation, you feel liberated instead of uncertain and full of doubts and conflicts. You experience inner peace. You'll always have a happy, joyful vibration. In fact, you continuously experience tremendous pleasure. Now the pleasure of chocolate is nothing for you. What you can now experience with your mind is super. It's like another realm, another dimension. And when your senses do come into contact with their objects, of course, you experience bliss then too. You hardly even notice whether it's night or day. Actually, even now, when you have samsaric happiness, you have a similar kind of experience. You dance and drink all night, intoxicated with the pleasure. Time just flies. Well, this is what happens when you've intoxicated with the blissful experience of samadhi. And of course, this shows that time is not fixed from the outside. It's made up by your mind. But also the point here is this. We've got to make the distinction between pleasure and attachment. That's our biggest trick. And we're going to do this tomorrow. It's a crystal clear, super important thing to understand. They have got technically are completely separate states of mind. But we conflate them. That's why we get so neurotic, you know. So we'll discuss tomorrow. Your body feels so light. They actually say you have, they call it this physical pliancy. Like, you know, Lama says that when you're out of meditation, the heavy energy of your body vanishes. Your body feels like a brand new body. You feel so light, almost as if you could fly. almost as if we had no body at all. To some extent, you know, and this is something quite unusual actually. It's extraordinary. Physical pliancy, they call it. You develop clairvoyance. This is kind of mystical to us. Lama Tsongkhapa says that you'll develop clairvoyance. According to the Abhidharma teachings, there are two kinds of clairvoyance. One is what we understand as intuition, an untrained sense that we all have to some extent. For some example, you might feel strongly without any logical proof that something has happened to your dear friend back home. The other can be gained by training the mind in meditation, as we're discussing here. This goes right back to the Hindus. They discovered this centuries ago, you know, because it's your subtler mind. Your subtler mind is like the microscope of your mind, that naturally, just naturally, has the power to cognize phenomena that are more subtle, such as the past, the future, the minds of others. This completely fits, and this view has been around for thousands of years, but we just think it's mystical nonsense, you know, what to do. Well, the best we think is you're born with this kind of, you know, this moments of clairvoyance. You read your crystal ball and you go, yeah, you're an Egyptian princess 14 lives ago. I mean, with respect to people who are clairvoyant in this life, it's really just momentary glances. Maybe they've meditated in a past life and they've got some ability, but we don't think of it as a thing you can learn to accomplish. You could get this in 3 years if you worked really hard in the mountains, I promise. And the Buddha's basically saying we can't begin to benefit sentient beings until we've got clairvoyance. The other can be gained by training the mind in meditation, as we're discussing here. You're able to see long distances as well as other people, including their minds. At first, your experiences seem a bit like a dream, but the more your concentration develops, the more clearly you can see, just as you would if you were there in person. You know, this kind of clairvoyance is not imagining something. It's real, in the present, not a fantasy. That'll do, just to give you a taste. And we'll go further, we'll discuss tomorrow, okay? This is Buddha's view. Buddha's reality. What we're all capable of. So we think all this day, today, we've been working hard, thinking, analysing, discussing. It's been a fantastic day, so grateful. Thank you so much. So all these thoughts have gone in. We don't remember 90%, that's okay. They've all gone in. So maybe we nourish these seeds with our effort from this moment forward, with our enthusiasm, with our optimism, with our courage, with our wisdom, with our compassion, to never give up for our sake and the sake of others. Gewadi nududag lama sange drubgyune drawa chikyang malupa de sala gopa shog jangchub semchog rinpoche make panam keguchi kepanyampa mepayang gong ne gong du paba shog. May we never develop, even for a moment, wrong views towards the deeds of our most precious teachers, with faith and respect gained from seeing their goodness. May their full inspiration flow into our hearts. Thank you, everybody. I'm just going to sit here and relax. You go. I'm going to sit here, relax, you go. Thank you.